We all owe Star Trek V an apology because this is the new worst Star Trek film. I have to say this a lot these days. Leave all your culture war crap at the door. I'm not interested. I don't care. It's irrelevant to this discussion. And if that's made you unsubscribe or click away, good. So, Star Trek Section 31 is a 90-minute TV movie Star Trek film. So I think calling it a Star Trek film and perhaps comparing it humorously to Star Trek V was a bit unfair because it's kind of essentially a TV movie, like the first Star Trek TV movie. What it means to be a TV movie in 2025 is very different to what it meant 20, 30 years ago. It's, got an Oscar-winning lead actor and a fair bit of money behind it. It is dreadful. It's completely awful. It's a very bad movie. And just to couch it in kind of what I think is kind of going on with Star Trek at the moment. Star Trek, probably since the J.J. Abrams Star Trek in 2009, has been made by and for people who don't like Star Trek. And that's a problem, because I think if you're not catering to your existing audience, you're trying to pander to one that only exists theoretically and in the ether, you might come unstuck and you end up appealing to no one. So Star Trek isn't about people in skin-tight leather doing cool backflips and swearing. And it never was. It was quite often about people in boardrooms discussing ethics. And that's good. It's why we liked it. If you don't like that, don't make Star Trek. I feel like Alex Kurtzman felt like he didn't get pulled along on the Star Wars journey with fucking J.J. Abrams, and now this is what we get. And I think the rot really starts with Star Trek Discovery, that I tried to give a go, give a fair shake to begin with, but just was dark and violent in the most juvenile, grimdark, let's say it kind of Zack Snyder way, that confuses maturity with swearing and violence. Now, as you all know, well, you probably don't know who I am, but if you do know and watch this channel, I love swearing and violence. I think they're great. I think they can be deployed really well. I love horror movies. I love action movies. I love comedies that are crass and swear. I've got a very rich vein of toilet humour myself. But it doesn't apply in Star Trek, right? I like blue cheese. I don't want blue cheese in my ice cream. So this impulse that Star Trek Picard had a dude smoking a big cigar in a society that's just long since discovered that this kind of shit gives you cancer. They have to have characters swear. And one of the main reasons people didn't swear in Star Trek because it was network television rooted in the 1960s. But it also spoke to a society that had kind of softened. And there's this real desire to well, it needs to have edge. Give it some edge. You want the edgy new Star Trek with edge? And it's like, no, it's Star Trek. I don't want fucking blue cheese in my ice cream any more than I want chocolate sauce on my steak. So when you've got people in skin-tight leather doing backflips and saying fuck, lo and behold, it doesn't feel like Star Trek. And you've got to put in all the kind of violence and stuff like that. You pay lip service to past episodes, you put in loads of Easter eggs and stuff. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit that you've referenced some TOS episode in your thing about, again, sweary, unlikable assholes in space. Now, it's a bit more ranty than I expected. I'll have some tea. Let's have some tea. Just to speak to what it's actually about, because that was a lot of kind of ranting about the kind of fundamental problems. It's essentially Expendables in space, really. It's kind of Expendables in space with a traitor whodunit in the middle, with a lot of really ill-advised choices. Now, just to get this out of the way, one thing I would say has been consistent in modern Star Trek is that modern Star Trek looks fantastic. Like, it looks great. I just find the lighting and camera work really, really nice. It looks very expensive, and that's great. And in terms of modern Star Trek, the spin-off of Discovery I like is Strange New Worlds. Strange New Worlds is great. It has the mood and intent and spirit of Star Trek married with the kind of production value of modern Star Trek. So it looks and feels great. The first episode of Strange New Worlds was essentially an extended discussion upon Is our dogma functional? Great. There's another episode about a supposedly reformed war criminal confronting someone he'd met in battle and their shared trauma. Great. It was a lot of people talking around tables. That's what Star Trek is. If you don't like it, don't fucking watch it. So, this is basically Michelle Yeoh runs a Witherspoons in space because she's undercover. And let's not forget that Michelle Yeoh is the cannibalistic space Hitler that we're all supposed to root for. The Section 31, who, if you don't know Star Trek, are a clandestine kind of arm of Starfleet, or not, debatably, who do undercover Black Ops type missions, supposedly. And they come to her with a wacky team of wacky people because they have to go get a MacGuffin that came from the Mirror Universe, which is where she's from. And that's all well and good, but you end up basically getting that Paul W.S. Anderson thing of like, we're putting a team together and you're never going to get to know them and half of them are going to die. So you sort of don't really care. There is one Vulcan character that turns out is one of those Men in Black robots with a tiny alien in its head, but he's doing the most astonishingly bad Irish accent you've ever heard in your life. There's a robot man, there's a Deltan who dies straight away. There's a shapeshifter guy played by that bloke from I Think You Should Leave. And it's 90 minutes of just kind of empty fluff. There's really very little happening in it. You know, they go to a handful of locations. There's lots of really awkward forced banter. They're trying to do a kind of, you know, Marvel thing where it's like, did you say poo-poo? Well, it sounded like poo-poo. How do you spell it? Is it P-U-P-U or P-O-O-P-O-O? That has no electric, has no chemistry, has no life. It just slows everything down. Everything just grinds to a halt so they can awkwardly banter. They are on a kind of handful of locations. They did there's something Star Trek Discovery did in that a character would be completely not fleshed out whatsoever, and then suddenly the episode would be entirely about them because they were going to kill them at the end to make you care. And they introduced in this Emperor Giorgio's former lover from the Mirror Universe, who we thought was dead, and then he dies because he's the villain, but really he's the good guy because he was fighting Space Hitler. Do you see this kind of rambling confusion that I have is how it feels to watch Section 31 of Paramount Plus. It's a very confusing, annoying film. Now, as a control group, and God bless her, I watched it with my girlfriend who is not a Trekker by any means. She's watched some Star Trek. She gets the gist. You know, she knows the deal. And she watched it with her dad and stuff. And I was like, hey, I'm going to review this. Can you watch it with me? She was like, yeah, absolutely. And the reason I think it's a good control group is because I'm the difficult to please Star Trek fan, right? I'm the fanboy that just wants it to resemble the thing I like. Whereas she notionally represents the non-Star Trek fan that Bad Robot and Modern Star Trek seem to want to please. And she hated it too. She was very much just like, well, there's all this backstory that isn't fully explained that I'm expected to know, but equally, I don't like any of these people. Not a lot is happening. It's not terribly interesting. Why is she good and he bad? Why should I care? You know, and it's telling to see the reviews of this, which have been very, you know, very, very 4 out of 10, like Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic. I know aren't the strongest bellwethers, but you know they do give an average, and the internet is flooded with reviews of how terrible this is, and it's quite hard to talk about it. All I've seemed to be, and I apologise, all I've seemed to be able to do is discuss it in the context of the state of modern Star Trek, because it just doesn't really have much of a plot. The Expendables go to a planet, one of them's a traitor, the Expendables win, and then they fly off in a Witherspoons at the end. That's kind of it. I think also as well, it shows a real misunderstanding of what Section 31 is, and I don't think it delivers on the promise of its title. So in Deep Space Nine, Section 31 is introduced as like this hyper-clandestine, very creepy kind of dark arm of Starfleet or the Federation, but then not really because they do their own thing, who are kind of guiding things behind the scenes. And they very explicitly say, we don't have ships, we don't have buildings, we don't have an office, we exist, we're a network. And when they introduced them into Star Trek Discovery, they very much... It's a bunch of assholes in a black starship in black leather who seemed very organised. And in this, it's called Section 31. What it is 8 people stood in a series of rooms on a Section 31 mission. Admittedly, it's sort of like, what's that thing called in Star Wars, like the Imperial Bureau that's in Andor? It's like the FSB or whatever. If there was a show called Star Wars FSB, and it was just 8 random people going to collect a suitcase, I would feel that hadn't quite delivered on its promise. This was originally meant to be a series, and it shows because it feels like it's got a whole series arc smushed into fucking 90 minutes. But if this was a series and it was about 8 people going to get a suitcase, I'd be like, this isn't fucking Section 31. This A, doesn't deliver on the promise of Section 31, or B, even understand what Section 31 is. Again, because modern Star Trek thinks that they have to make the characters mean and sweary and do backflips. One of the things I really hated in Star Trek Discovery, that really bothered me, was you would have someone like the character of Michael Burnham act like a kind of violent psychopath, and they all did it. And they'd run in, because, like, don't get me wrong, the characters in Star Trek take lives quite frequently, but it's shown as a last resort, and it's shown as something that they're forced into. Certainly not something they enjoy. In Star Trek Discovery, characters like run into a room, screaming, covered in blood, break a bunch of people's necks, do backflips, make wacky quips, and then go, "I love peace and science," at the end, as if tacking that sentiment on was in any way meaningful. And this doesn't have to do that because it's the dark, edgy Section 31. So they just say shit and then kill. I hated it very much. Is the upshot? I haven't recorded a review like this for a while, and I made an attempt yesterday and actually stopped halfway through because I just felt it wasn't really working. And Duncan encouraged me to have another swing, and this cup of tepid tea, and having digested it overnight, has made me quite ranty, and I'm very sorry. And if you're new here, I apologise, you probably tuned out quite quickly. But what did you think of Star Trek Section 31? Put all your views in the comments. Let's have a chat. We've got other stuff coming out quite regularly. It's usually me and my cohort Duncan who review things together. You can go back through our channel, see all of our old content. So, go watch it, see what you think. Come and have a chat. But I would recommend don't watch it because it fucking sucks.